Hi, I'm Claire Connolly.
And I'm Amy Andrews.
And welcome to How to Watch Movies Like a Writer. So this week we're talking about a classic from the early 2000s, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Amy, what did you think of this?
I love this movie. I've always loved this movie. It used to be in my top 5 of favorite rom-coms. So and it's been a while since I watched it, but I still feel that it's held up really well. I still got all the swoony feels, and I laughed, and I loved a lot of the one-liners. So and I think it's a rom-com. It follows, kind of hits all those classic rom-com tropes, those rom-com kind of beats. So yeah, I really loved it. What about you?
So I also loved this movie when it came out. I definitely watched it on repeat, and I used to have the DVD, which I couldn't find when I went to do the rewatch this time. I actually loved it less
Me
watching it.
too.
Yeah, and so that was really interesting to me to analyze why I didn't buy the chemistry as authentically between the characters, and I think from a story for me, from a storytelling perspective, that came down to the writers needed the couple to get together because they needed the whole story was about the worlds colliding and the wedding. So there was no impediment to them coming together. It
Mhm.
seemed unbelievably fast. I didn't buy the insta love this time around, whereas I did when I first watched it in the 2000s. Do you think that's a similar reason for you?
Oh, sorry. No, not at all. I actually revisited that whole swoony feeling when she first sees him walk past, and when he comes in and she stares at him, and then when they, I think that, I think that's a love. I think that's the most beautiful thing about it. It's such a, where he says to his best friend, who's trying to set him up with all these other women, and he says they're all the same. They're just all the same.
Mm.
And then he sees her, and I just kind of felt, I really felt that they got each other. That he was waiting for the right person, the one, and she was kind of not necessarily waiting for the one, just waiting for anyone to take out of her life. But then she couldn't stop looking at him. I loved that moment. It gave me a really swoopy butterfly feeling that it had. And I think maybe that's why I loved it. I love that the relationships in the movie are so lovely and kind of gentle as well. But I think it didn't stand up very well. Obviously, it was a film in the kind of, of its time. I don't think it stood up so well to, everybody calling her ugly, and that kind of, those sort of things. But yeah, no, I loved it as much.
Yeah, I was really interested. So there was a lot I did enjoy about it still. So as you say, all of the characters are nice because I was reflecting on this that the only sort of impediment or external pressure in the sense of a person who might be an impediment to their wedding was her dad, right? And even you could see that he just loved his family so much. So he might have been controlling and had very firm ideas of what
Yeah,
he wanted his children to do and be, but it was from a place of love and building the family up. All of the characters, it was a great ensemble cast of characters like Vula and Nikki and Nick, who all had so much heart and they were not two-dimensional side characters. They had their own um, presence in the story.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it was more. I mean, I guess a father is the symptom of a bigger thing, but it felt very cross cultural. Like I felt like there was the bigger conflict was, that they're trying to keep, like marrying like being with like, and how she was busting out of that. I think there was a much broader pressure on her than just her father. It's like the whole expectation of the Greek community, you only marry Greek people, that really cultural thing. I felt, she said, I can't marry you. I feel like I can't marry you because I'm happy, but my whole family's unhappy. And so it wasn't just her father. She felt that expectation that you must only marry a Greek. She's the first one in her family who'd never been out with anybody other than a Greek. So I feel like it was a much bigger cultural divide she was trying to cross mentally as well as practically.
And I think for him too, they draw that amazing contrast between the very quiet, staid Miller parents who were dull initially, but who by the end, you know, I love it when at the end of the movie when he gets her up to dance, he says, "Come on, Harry," you know, as her name is written on the wedding invitation. But it is that the tension does come from that worlds collide trope where they are both living completely different realities. They've got different expectations, different life experiences, and then I just find this movie really interesting. Again, watching it more analytically now, because even the inciting incident for her to change, that wasn't meeting him really. She had already started wanting to change,
No,
wanting to go to adult
yes.
education courses. Um, and I like that. I really do. I like that her sort of starting to dress a bit differently and pursue working in the travel agency instead of the restaurant was independent of him. So she was in this whole revolution point of her life.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. She wasn't doing it for him. He just happened to
Mm.
come along at the kind of same time that she was starting to decide that she wanted to like change her life and become something else. And I think one of the other tropes in this movie is the ugly duckling trope, right?
Mm. And
She,
Cinderella
she
in this
starts off as
film.
this kind of, yeah, this frumpy kind of, woman who has no kind of, outlook or expectation of being anything other than the ugly duckling in the family. And then she kind of
Mm.
just transforms into this sort of swan. And you're right, independent of the hero. She was doing that without him anyway. But then the way he looks at her is just, I mean, even when he first met her I love that when they first meet in the restaurant, she makes she cracks a joke and he laughs. I love that. I love that so much. It's like, it's that thing about, sometimes funny is the most attractive thing in a person. You don't have to, physical attraction is one thing, but if you can make somebody laugh, I love that moment.
Yeah, the Greek statue comment, right? Where she says, "You've got
Mm,
your own Greek statue standing here," and he laughs, and yeah, I liked that too. I
yeah,
think that was
yeah,
important to
that's
see
right.
even when she was pre her transformation, that he still thought she was funny. And then when he remembered her, you know, where they're sitting at the restaurant having their first date, and she says, "Yeah, I was going through a frump girl phase," and he says, "I don't remember that. I remember you, but I don't remember frump girl." So it's, that sort of indication that he didn't see her
Oh,
as
I love that.
frumpy.
That made me swoon.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
beautiful.
that line made me swoon as well. Oh, I remember you.
Yeah. Yeah, and her looking like she just doesn't want him to remember her because that's not who she is. It
You're a
was
frump
so
girl.
I actually haven't
Mm,
watched any of
yeah,
the sequels to this movie because I always felt
don't.
everything I needed a story to deliver was delivered in this movie, and because they did the flash forward of the 6 years later, their little girl going off to Greek school, and then they come
Mm,
out and did you watch it this time? So after they walk out and the credits start to roll, the camera stays focused on the Portocullis parent house for a really long time. And so you can see that her
mm.
older sister Athena is pregnant again, and the dad's Windexing
Doing
the
it
car.
again.
And
Yeah.
Nick, the brother, I think
So,
he's doing something
so
to
things have
change.
changed, but things haven't changed.
Exactly. And you get this lovely, as I say, it's that real epilogue vibe. That's I am a huge
Yes.
fan of that in movies when they do give you a bit more of a payoff than just the happy ending kiss.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
Let's
thing
let's
of
definitely score one for an epilogue in that situation.
yeah. So all right. So the characterizations, we loved all the characters, right? How do you think they made them likable?
I think because they're all so genuine. You're right. Saying how they all just love each other. I think
Mm,
there's we're here together because we're family, but they're all, and yes, they're in each other's lives and they're annoying, but it comes from such a place of like love, like
mm.
the scene where they're trying to get the father to think it was his idea for Tula to go work in the travel agency, and
That's
when
one
she
of my
asked
favorites
Tula, would
too.
would Tula let her come work? Yeah, I know. Yeah. So I think I think this is what's lacking in the next two movies. Don't watch the next two movies; they're not very good. Is that it's just there's just the lines are written with such love and care and talk about family and um I don't I don't guess it wasn't really anybody objectionable in the movie, at all, really. They were all just, um just written, I think, with with a really deft touch whilst playing into kind of the sort of stereotype. I think it would be very easy to have stereotypical kind of big Greek family, which I think happened in the second and third movies. But because it was just written I think it was written by the character that plays,
Nia
now I've
Vardalos.
forgotten her name. Um, yeah, and obviously she's from the Greek community, so you could really tell that. You could tell that it was written so sort of lovingly. All these characters were infused with, they weren't two-dimensional like we talk about in the course, right? They weren't cookie cut out, this is a story about Greek people living in America. They all had their own little backgrounds, like the story where Phil was telling about how she had a twin cut out of a neck, to his parents, and they all have these little individual quirks. They're not just, these just two-dimensional characters. Are really well fleshed out.
Yeah, it's true. Like, even Ian's best friend, he's on the screen probably cumulatively for about 5 minutes, but you do feel that you get a sense. And I love that that moment where he says to Ian, "You're really doing a lot for this. Like, this girl's family's really got you by the short and curlies," or something like that. And Ian goes, "Yeah," or something like, "What's your point?" Like, it just showed how much he loved her, and he did not
I
mind.
know, that's a lovely interaction.
And there was I mean, I guess this film, it's a bit of a unicorn in the sense that it is extremely unusual to have a movie that really doesn't have, apart from the worlds colliding element and the sort of cultural differences, even that wasn't massive because he was so willing to slip into her what was important to her. There's no real tension point. There is no bad guy. His parents could have been set up to be villains. They could have been dead set against it. Her dad could have been a villain, dead set against. I mean, he was against it, but he did that moment when they get engaged, and it just is him sitting in the dimly lit lounge room, staring as if going, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" is so well done, because he's not saying you can't do it. It's just so not what he wanted for his little girl that you feel sympathetic for him, even though you want them to get married. I think that's really unique, to not have more tension points in a movie or story.
I agree. I think there's not a lot of internal conflict, really, is there? I think for her there is. I think she's got to overcome her own personal demons, which is that pretty quickly. You're right at the beginning of the movie, where she kind of becomes this sort of swan. But there's no. It's all a lot of the conflict is external, and as we talk about in the course, internal conflict is really important to to drive a story forward. But they're really relying on this movie for a lot of external stuff to kind of drive the plot forward. But I don't know, it kind of worked for me.
It works for me,
and
it really worked for everybody because it was such a hit, right? And it has been enduringly beloved. Like, watching it back again this time, as I said, I didn't love it as much as I did at the time, but I still loved it. I still cried. I cried at the wedding. I cried when they gave them the house. I laughed. It's got so much going for it. But there are so many ways that I guess if I was writing it to put tension in, you think there could have been an ex-wife in the picture, or maybe even a child with an ex-wife, and an impediment to making it easy for him to convert faith, is because there was no impediment to that. Even she didn't grapple with his decision to do that. It was all very, "Oh, you do that for me, you're amazing." But there was, which again I liked. I just think it's unusual to have a story that doesn't have those sort of tension points, or doesn't exploit them. That's not what the movie was doing. It was a feel-good from beginning to end.
Yeah, and we were right. It was all moving towards the wedding. I mean, it says in the title, "My Big Fat Greek Wedding," right? So really, the end goal was the wedding, and so they kind of had to sort of move their way towards that. I loved had a real, I suppose it was like 20 years old now, wasn't it? It's like, I forget to look, I didn't look up what
Mm.
the time was, but I'm sure it's about 20 years old now. So I guess it's kind of a different time. But I kind of love, I love how sort of old fashioned it seemed like even at the time. I love the whole, um, when they're getting more and more passionate in the car every time that they go out. So to me, that really felt like a marching of time as well. We didn't really know how long it'd taken for them to go from like, beginning to sort of marriage. But I loved those making out in the car scenes. I loved um how he didn't try to, he wasn't trying to rush her or push her or any of those kind of things. Their sexual tension was really palpable. I felt like in those scenes, having been there and done that kind of thing back in my teenage years, I really related to it. I loved it so much. And I felt like that you were saying you felt it was a bit rushed, whereas I felt like they marked time quite
I
well.
felt
She was
the
at community
initial
college,
thing
she
of,
was at the travel agent.
yeah, I agree with you. I think that the sexual tension was built really well. I felt that first thing where he sees her at the travel agency, comes in, and then they're sitting on the floor and giggling. Potentially I might have needed a few other little interactions before that. However, that's a very small thing. I agree with you about the sexual tension. I love that then there is that slight, very light tension point of Nikki coming into the travel agency and saying, "You guys are caught. So and so saw you sucking face," and everybody knows. Then the dad does set her up on those dates, but again, there's nobody there who could be a legitimate threat. It would be different if he'd set her up with a really nice looking Greek guy who she could potentially be interested
Yeah,
in. There's
yeah,
no love triangle. It's just, and it's after that Ian drives her to his house and says, "Do you want to come up?" And then I love that scene where she's like literally
yeah.
jumps him twice, literally jumps on him twice.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. And see, even I think even the scenes where her father's setting her up with all those guys. I mean, that they were real cliches, you're right. There was no actual real legitimate choice there, was it? Like they were all kind of stereotypical cliches of what you think of, as kind of a kind of Greek man that might be a little bit past his, that it's the opposite of the Greek Adonis kind of thing. But even in that I mean, that was and again, yeah, great marking of time, great comedic effect, right, as well. You have to remember that it's rom-com, so they really, really do hit the rom-com stuff so well. I like so much great dialogue in this, right? There's so many great lines. And you can, there's this kind of comedic effects like the father with the Windex and all that sort of thing. But also there were such beautiful little moments and lines. You were saying you cried, at the end when they got the house. I always get teary in the bit when they're watching him being
Baptized.
baptized in the church, and she says to her brother, "Oh, he's gonna look around me and look at me and go, 'You're so not worth this.'" And her brother says, "Yes, you are." Oh,
I know,
that just
me
gets
too.
me every time. That's
I
such a
was just about to
beautiful,
say,
simple, lovely line.
their relationship is one of my favorite in the movies because you can see that they have a very similar, um, they both wanna do other things, and they've got this very loving but controlling dad. And so I love that she is the one also who kind of paves the way for Nick to pursue his painting and who sort of advocates for him and encourages him in
Yes,
that. That is a lovely
yes,
relationship. I love that baptism scene. I love it when Ian sort of pops his head up and he just is like a little puppy dog with his, he's all wet faced and wet haired,
yeah,
and one of my favorite lines
and
in
he's
the
still smiling
movie.
at her.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines in the movie is at the end when Vula says to Taki, "He almost looks Greek." And it's the highest compliment that she can give, and that
Yeah,
they've just
absolutely.
completely
There's so
adopted him.
much. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what makes the movie so well done and well rounded and well thought out. Is yes, it's romantic comedy, so there's lots of funny moments, but there's also lots of those kind of stiller moments where with dialogue that's not, slapstick funny, not everyone's, rolling around the aisles, rubbing their bellies. It's just quiet and beautiful, and it gives you that emotional depth. It's not just all like the second movie is all just the same lines repeated over and over with no emotional depth. I feel like those little moments when his best friend says to him, "Wow, they've really got you by the short and curlies." He's like, "Yeah," and the bit where he says to his best friend, about the other girlfriends, they're all the same. Like those, I really like those little kind of moments which goes to show with dialogue's important with dialogue and with stories. Any story that's sad can't be overwhelmingly sad all the time. Any story that's funny can't be overwhelmingly funny all the time. There has to be these moments, and it's best often, I think, through dialogue that you can get, in one succinct, rather than like a page of prose, in one succinct line or two, you can get across, the real kind of emotional underbelly, whether it be, sad or happy or whatever.
Mm. Yeah, I agree, and it's just I found this very interesting because I am such a presents writer. I could really see all the points where I would want to put in something dark happening, something angsty. That is my natural bent. But I was watching this again. So in our course, we have that amazing unit on structure, and I was trying to pick what in this movie would pass as a black moment or a dark moment. And the
Mm,
closest that I could get, I don't know if you have thoughts on this, was when she came to him at school. And it wasn't even really a dark moment. I mean, it was in the context of the film, but not in the sense of when you think of a dark moment, and these are in all genres, there's always that moment toward the sort of the last act of the story where it feels
yeah.
like everything's gone wrong. And I couldn't really find that in this. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that probably is the darkest moment for her, when she realizes the conflict, the tension between the world she's from, and the world she wants to move into, or the world that he's from. Those two kind of worlds are kind of clashing. I
Mm.
think that you're right. I don't think it has a really big dark moment. That's probably it, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which kind of underscores
So,
how this movie,
Ben,
it's just such a
sorry.
warm hug, like I say, which is there is no moment in this that I felt imperiled or that their relationship felt imperiled. It was lovely. I really like that. I think that is that, gosh, post 2020, that low angst thing is so nice.
Yeah, it's very low angst, and all the angst does come from, external sort of stuff. I agree.
Mm.
Um, Another thing, another moment, another bit of dialogue. She's sort of saying, and I can't remember whether it was in that scene where she's like, "Let's just elope, let's just go." Where she asks him why he's doing it for her, and he says, "Because I came alive when I met you." Oops,
Yeah.
sorry about that. Because I came alive when I met you, and I'm like, oh, that's just, again, this little kind of, emotional sort of touchstone that was just, just absolutely, absolutely lovely.
It was,
I'm
and
thinking
okay,
about now.
can I be completely honest though? And again, I have to preface this by saying I love this movie and I really enjoyed it, but that didn't quite ring true for me. I think I didn't see enough of why they came alive together. So I didn't see enough of
Mm,
what in her appealed to him. I mean, I know she's different and I know she's lovely because we've seen her with her family, but I that wasn't the point. It wasn't really to set the point was just about cultural differences and the worlds colliding. I just didn't feel I think that was part of where it did fall a bit flat for me was I couldn't see anything that they really connected on. I felt we were told they were in love, not
so
shown it.
yeah, maybe. I guess to me, that's just love at first sight, right?
Mm,
Like, there's a classic, literally for her. She literally saw him and she couldn't like move. She was that was that kind of love at first sight thing. So if you can accept that premise, and as somebody who fell in love at first sight with her husband of 30 odd years ago, I totally get that. Um, although it is hard to pull off. You're right, and I think that
But I did too, but
it's
beyond the
you know
love at
readers
first
are going to
sight,
want a bit more.
you want to see how that love bears out. That's like Ali's HEA guarantee, which again, I did buy the HEA guarantee. I did see that they were both all in. I did feel that the relationship would go the distance. I just would have liked a little bit more meeting of the minds in the early stages of dating.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe that could be true. I think the HA guarantee that Ali talks about in the course, those moments that that when the end is it's all over and done with, that they're going to be able to stick with each other through thick and thin, no matter what happens. I think almost everything that he did in that movie proved to her or proved to me that they were going to have the happily ever after guarantee was 100% minted gold, because every little moment he was just there for her. Every time she was stumbling or falling or saying this is going to work, he was just there. I've got you. It's fine. Because I came alive when I met you. I'll do whatever it is. I'll convert. All those kind of little things. I think we're definitely like, yep. These are a couple that are going to be okay once the wedding's all said and done.
For me, he was almost a victim of his own success, because he was such a great guy. He was so nice. He was so tolerant. He was so compassionate, so understanding. I found it implausible that there was not some woman he'd met at some point who, I know I get the love at first sight trope and the idea that they're soulmates and there's only one person for the other, but he was, I found myself wondering how it was possible that he'd got to his age and not clicked with someone at some point. And once he clicks with someone, he's obviously willing to do whatever it takes to stay with them. And that's why I was looking for a little bit more between them. I wanted a little bit more between them to see what was uniquely special about their connection. And that's just for me. That was just, I was watching it a little bit differently this time. Like I said, I still really love it. I just felt that in terms of characterization, someone like that, you have to admit, he was a unicorn character as well. And I needed a little explanation there, other than they're all the same, because they're not all the same. Not every woman is the same. There's lots of great women out there.
Yeah, I feel like that was enough for me, because that line encapsulated, not that all the women he's met in the past have been the same, but all the women he's obviously been trying to being set up a lot, and he's not interested in a bunch of women. He's just looking for the one, and so I get from that he has never really truly found the one. So that was enough for me. But I'm kind of always all in on love at first sight, I guess. So.
I so that's just, I guess, more of a romantic part than I am.
You wouldn't know it really, but I guess I am with that kind of thing. I'm completely always on board with the whole. I can always buy. I know people out there who read romance novels or who are critics of romance novels are very anti the whole love at first sight thing, but I guess. I'm not. I'm completely willing to sort of go there as a starting point. I don't think he fell in love at first sight. Obviously, he had that moment in the in that when they first meet in the restaurant. But with that laugh, him laughing and really looking at her, and I love how much he loved the restaurant right from the beginning. He was really into, oh, what's this sauce or this chips? That's amazing. And I loved that he tried to get her to go. He's like, oh, do you want Greek food? I know this great restaurant. I feel like all those little things were like kind of signposts of this kind of connection that he had for her that maybe he didn't even know about. Because when he sees her through the window at the travel agent, they kind of have this, he sees her then and he's pretty much sort of all in. So I wonder, to me, that kind of transient prior connection they had is all kind of, been working up there in his head for it to be for her to be the one. I don't know. Like I said, I'm very on board with love at first sight. So I'm happy to take that as a.
I definitely am too. But I just think when I get the love at first sight thing, and then I still think there has to be I need slightly more. But that's just me personally. Like, it is possible that there is slightly more and it just wasn't what I was looking for. Obviously, their chemistry is there. His love for her is there. It just comes down to a meeting of the minds for me. Like, I almost felt that, I don't know, it's really hard to describe. I didn't quite feel that it worked on an intellectual level as a couple. I just really, it's such a fine thing, and I can't put my finger on it. I just would have liked something a little bit more. But then I loved his interactions with her family. And the way that, I think, like I said, they showed us with them kind of slinking off, when the poor parents are stranded at the party drinking ouzo until they're woozo.
Yeah.
And they kind of slink off. So I think you
Mhm.
get lots of instances where you see them going off on their own to do their thing, from which we can infer that they do have that meeting of the minds. It's just I didn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. All right, I'll give you that.
You don't have to.
So what about what about the Hollywood moment? Do you want to? You talk about the Hollywood moment on the course, yeah?
Yeah, so like the most memorable moment in the movie, that really special, the one that gives you goosebumps or makes you want to cry. Gosh, what would it be in this movie? The biggest moment for me is when the parents give them the house. I just think that's so special because they've worked so hard running all their different businesses and keeping everything. It's just, I think that's so lovely. What about for you?
I feel like the Hollywood moment, and I feel like it's probably fair to say that not every movie has a Hollywood moment, right, or every book, but
Mm.
and I feel like this one probably doesn't have such as well-known ones as I'm just a boy standing in front of a girl asking to love her and that kind of thing. But I do really love I love the proposal scene. I love where they're laying in bed together and he proposes to her and she cries and he's so great with her, and I think that's a moment that I've always really loved. And also the probably I guess the baptism scenes quite funny and quite memorable as well. And also obviously I love that line from the brother in it. So I guess there's lots of little comedic moments that sort of stand out, but the proposal scene is quite lovely.
I actually loved as well the scene where, oh god, oh yes, where the dad has found out and he's talking to Ian, and Ian's he says, and you're seeing her and you're dating and you didn't ask my permission if you can date my daughter, and you can see Ian kind of going, she's 30, and and then but he actually pulls it back in and goes, well, may I date your daughter? And the dad goes, no. And Ian he's still so
Yeah.
respectful as he leaves, but he says to Tula, I'll see you tonight. He's not gonna start a fight, but he is still sticking
Yeah.
to his guns. Yeah. We'll still date, but
Yeah, that's right.
it was so sweet though,
Yeah.
seeing
I
that moment where Tula's watching TV with her parents late at night and she's kind of sandwiched in between them on the plastic covered sofa. That as a visual for
yeah.
the movie for me, because it's so lovely and loving. So you can just feel the love, but the stiflingness of it too.
Yeah. Exactly. It's all the things. It's got that double-edged sword to it, hasn't it? I think also the bunt cake scene is quite funny. It's not really to do with the romance, but where Harry brings the bunt cake and then she puts the Tilda's mother puts the bloody flower pot in the middle of it. Yeah.
And you hear someone in the background go, "Oh, you'll fix it."
That's right. Or that I think that the scene where they have to break it to Tula that he's a vegetarian, that's kind of a scene that sticks out as well. Like from the movie,
Yes.
What? You're a vegetarian? The whole place goes quiet. Oh, it's okay. I make lamb. Like that's a great line. Great kind of Hollywood moment.
That is one we quote all the time. Yeah. If I'm making lamb for my family, I'll say, "I make a lamb." It's so good.
See, so there you go. It's been memorable. It stuck out. It's carried you through.
Oh,
What
yeah.
about the first kiss? Got to talk about the first kiss on the
Where
bridge.
I watched this. Oh, do you know what?
On the
It hasn't
bridge when they talk about Easter or
Yeah,
Christmas.
that's right. And she's saying she's got a
Mm,
million cousins, and yeah, I guess it was special, but there was no tension about whether or not it would happen. The sexual tension for me was, you're right, it's the car scene, and you could just feel it building and building, and her constantly getting
yes.
out and his frustration. That I felt more so than the
Yeah.
first kiss.
Yeah. And her getting more and more wobbly as she walks away from
Yeah.
the car. She gets out, kind of not being able to climb. Yeah, that was really good. I liked the first kiss scene. I don't think the kiss was necessarily, oh my god, an amazing kiss, but I loved that. That's kind of the first time she talks about her family, like the Greekness of her family, right? Talks about how, her Aunt Vula stabs the eyeball out of the lamb and
Chases
chases her
her
around
around.
after it. That because it brings her luck or whatever, or makes her hair curly or whatever it is. So I like that. That's the kind of first real, because she's been trying to hide herself a bit until then. She hasn't really gone into her crazy wacky family. And I like that doesn't phase him, and I like that he calls her beautiful for the first time. And like, I thought the setup for the kiss was really lovely. Yeah, but you're right. There's
Mm,
definitely the kisses in the car. That montage of scenes is definitely very steamy, and you could tell the sexual tension is building between them a lot. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, okay, I guess we're coming towards the end. Anything else we
Yes.
need to discuss?
I think that's it. I think all in all, it's quite a unique story. I think that it actually doesn't have some of the things that I would consider pretty essential, and yet it's such a great movie.
Mm,
It's so entertaining. It's you laugh, you
mm,
cry. The warmth of it is palpable. It's beautiful.
yeah, yeah, and it hits all the kind of the four sort of markers to me of romantic comedy. It has a zany setup, the kind of going towards a sort of crazy wedding with a crazy family. It has a wacky kind of cast of side characters. It has amazing, sharp, sort of zingy dialogue, and it has the madcap plot as well. So I
Mm.
think it kind of hits all those. It works really well as a romantic comedy, probably maybe more than an actual true romance, because you're right, it
Mm.
kind of misses some of the, more in depth, and kind of internal conflict sort of stuff for both of them anyway. But yeah, I think it's a win, and if people out there haven't seen it, I think it's a great one to go and watch, particularly for the romantic comedy part of it. I think that works really, really well.
It does, and also for characterization, because I think you've got some characters like the dad who just have they're complex. All the side characters have got great richness and depth, so it's really worth watching from that. And the dialogue and the relationship. I'll tell you what, I felt that the love between Nick, the brother, and Tula was almost more convincing to me as a love. That I felt that it was such a great relationship. But I'll stop banging on about that now, because it makes it seem like I didn't love it, and I really do. And I loved the premise and the
Yeah.
setup. And like you said, it's the comedic stuff and the setup of the comedy is what is done so well.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think it is great study for in character. That's true, and how to make characters that could have been more kind of poisonous, I suppose, and they weren't. And that's what we talk about, in the course, right? Isn't it? We do a whole section on characterization and how characters have to be three-dimensional, even like the tiniest of characters, make them three-dimensional, and give them motivation, so you can understand sort of why the main characters hang out with them or like them or love them, or all those kind of things. This movie does great characterization.
It really does. All right, that's us wrapping
Yeah.
up this one. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back with another how to watch movies like a writer soon.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.